Alif the Unseen is, it's about a young, disenfranchised hacktivist in an unnamed Middle Eastern emirate who falls in love with the wrong girl and is forced to go on the run from a very shadowy state security apparatus that seems to have a lot more than just technology up its sleeve. And so he goes underground with the girl next door and some genies, and a book that appears to be many hundreds of years old, but may or may not be a fake. So it's an urban fantasy. There's a lot of politics in it and a lot of big questions, and it's a lot of fun. I wanted to do a couple of different things. I wanted to pay tribute to the youth movement in the Middle East, which was so high-tech and which was using technology in these wonderful new ways to break down barriers, to get past the censorship that is such a big problem with print and television media in the Middle East. And I was frustrated that they really were not getting a lot of airtime here in the West. People were very dismissive of social media 5 or 10 years ago. And Gen Y was sort of dismissed as this generation of like texting slackers with no social consciousness. And I could see from what was going on in the youth movement in the Middle East, this was far from true. And that there was something big that was going to come out of this, but even I did not know how big. So that was one thing. But the other thing I wanted to do was get a little less serious, to sort of be able to explore the mystical dimensions of religion in the Middle East, and you know, how that plays out in people's everyday lives, and how close the seen and the unseen worlds are, you know, in the eyes of sort of the more traditional religious people to whom things like genies and angels are very close to us. They're not in some sort of weird separate reality. And I wanted to sort of show in a fun way how all of that stuff blended together and capture some of that wonderful chaos of life in the Middle East. You know, he sort of leapt onto the page. He's very loosely based on a real person I know who is a hacker. Although some would object to that term probably. But other than that very loose inspiration, he was kind of all my, a collection of my observations about some of the challenges that are facing young men in the Middle East. Which I got to see sort of firsthand when I was living there. I mean, I think here in the US, when we talk about these things, we're used to sort of hearing about oppressed Arab and Muslim women, and there's really not a lot of attention paid to some of the things that are facing young Arab and Muslim men in the Middle East. And I sort of wanted to remedy that and to kind of get inside the head of a young man who has an education but no job opportunities, who is living in a society that is very stratified by class. And you know, in Alif's case, he is sort of the product of a taboo marriage between his father, who is kind of from the Arab aristocracy in this Gulf emirate, but his mother is an Indian woman who came to the Gulf as a guest worker, as so many Indians and Bangladeshis and Pakistanis do. So he has the added difficulty of being biracial in this very kind of heated society. And so I wanted to kind of tease that out and to show people, I think, a side of the Middle East that we don't typically see. Well, you know, Alif is not a religious character, really. When the book, not at all. Not at all. When the book starts out, he's very ambivalent. And, you know, even though he's kind of into geek culture and reads fantasy novels and all of this stuff, when that stuff starts becoming real, he gets pretty scared. And it's his neighbor, Dina, who is quite religious, who's the one to sort of tell him, is like, this has all been written down, this is all in the holy books. You know, why are you afraid when the things you want to be real are real? And he says, because when they're real, they're scary. No. But you know what it is? You know, she's really the kind of convert I tried hard not to be. She's very academic. She's somewhat rigid. She does not have a great sense of humor about her place in the society that she's entered into. And I tried to avoid some of those pitfalls with varying success. But she's certainly a collection of observations that I had built up about other converts who were living in the Middle East, many of whom became very disenfranchised and very bitter, thinking that they were going to enter this society and it was going to embrace them with open arms, and everything was going to be great. And then when that doesn't happen, that throws their entire sense of being kind of into shock.
I bet it does.
And but what I wanted to do by including her was show that, you know, I could, as an American writer, coming from a different civilization, sort of turn that authorial laser beam on myself and unpack some of my own baggage. Because I feel like I sort of owed that to the subject matter of the book. Because, I mean, you know, even though I have lived in the Middle East and I speak Arabic and all of this stuff, at the end of the day, I'm still an American writer writing in English. And I felt that it sort of behooved me, if I was going to set a book in this place and use these characters, to kind of poke a little bit of fun at myself.